Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about the Power Siphon of Archmage Ballista I've been testing over the last week or so. So with Path of Exile right around the corner, I wanted to get back. I wanted to de-rust a little bit, do some runs, and I had this idea in my mind for quite a while, especially after Freesia League, where we had Whisperer and a lot of attack-based mana builds. Back then I played Kinetic Blast of Clustering, and it was an absolute blast, a Kinetic Blast even. And yeah, Power Siphon of Archmage is kind of one of those skills I haven't really explored yet, but at least in the POBs I've been making, it just looked incredible because of how much flat damage it has. So it lends itself to extremely easy early itemization. And if you've played Power Siphon Miners or anything like that, you already kind of know the drill. It's just with Ballistas, and it is mana stacking time. So instead of having the power charge payoffs, you have mana payoffs, and it is quite a bit. It got buffed last patch. I didn't realize just how good it was, especially early. My issue often is I focus very much on Indigon, and then Indigon could be expensive or whatever, but I really underestimated the skill, and I've been chunking away at the leveling, at the early game, mid game, everything from 0 to 10 divines. And yesterday we have basically done everything up to, including feared. 4 round about 10 divines is obviously always hard to know. But in general, I'm very happy with it, and I wanted to share it before patch notes. Obviously, I know that in patch, everything could change, but when it comes to what is currently considered caster Archmage, it not a lot overlaps there. Same goes for Power Siphon and Power Siphon of Archmage. Not that much actually overlaps. Power Siphon of Archmage doesn't even have damage effectiveness, so I'm not really sure if it should be nerfed, but in general, I have been absolutely having a blast. But once again, big disclaimer, I don't know what's going to happen in the patch notes. It could get nerfed, it could even get buffed. Who the hell knows? This is just something I wanted to do because it was fun, and I wanted to put it out a little bit before patch notes in case people also feel like playing some PoE1 before, and yeah, they want to try it out. Which is also why I made an extensive POB right here. If you want to try it out, use the loadouts. If you don't know what loadouts are, it's basically groupings. So for example, if I click on stage 1, it will automatically bring up the right gems with the right gear, with the right passive tree. First, let's talk about Power Siphon of the Archmage. The difference to normal Power Siphon is Power Siphon has a ton of power charge scaling. You can see here more crit, extra crit multi per power charge, whereas on Archmage, you have this line right here, which is added lightning damage equal to 24% of your maximum mana. This one got buffed. So the skill got buffed over the last 2 leagues, and I think we're at a crossroads here where the skill is now actually really, really good. So it used to be 20% with quality, and now it is 27% with quality. As well as that, in 3.25, we got the same treatment as Power Siphon. It now has spell damage as extra attack damage for 150% of their value. So whereas before, you had to go for the Wand Mastery right here, which only gave you 100% scaling. Now you get 150 and you don't have to take it anymore. As well as that, you got 15% more base attack speed, just like normal Power Siphon. Now, this is a pretty big deal, 27% of your mana, and this also counts reserve mana, which we're not gonna do, but just FYI. If you have 5,000 mana, which is roundabout what I had on craft, gear with crafted mana, basically, level 90, roundabout, we are looking at 1,350 flat damage, and that doesn't just mean that you're getting 5 times a Wrath Aura, just normally. It also means that your gearing becomes a lot easier, and you don't need a high damage wand. So this is the wand that I cleared feared with. Actually, I should say, I think I had a better old Piscators, yeah. So this is a tier 4 unique that costs around 2 to 10 chaos on Leaguestart with a little bit better rolls, maybe 20 chaos, and it is all you need forever. Piscators has everything you would ever need other than the flat damage, but that one is already intrinsic to the skill, so it's not a downside. You get accuracy, crit, attack speed, you get a lot of increased damage, you get a little bit of pen. It's not a great wand. You can make a way better one for 50C or more, but I just wanted to make a point. Now, why Ballistas though? In order to show you, I will quickly show you without Ballistas. So Power Siphon doesn't really do anything on its own if you've never played it. If you just right click it, nothing happens. You have to actually have enemies nearby. And well, that doesn't really happen right now, but let's just go in. You can see right here, we are kind of hitting enemies. The reason I'm not dealing any damage is because I have Ancestral Bond, right? But just to showcase you, you're not actually hitting that many enemies, especially not early on when you have Fury Valve. But with Ballistas, 7-8 Ballistas, a ton of projectiles going around, your clears will go quite a bit better. Same goes for mines. I mean, if you've played Power Siphon mines, normal ones at least, you'll know what I mean. I'll quickly show you a map. There's obviously a ton of reasons, but let's go over the clear. So this has been the by far best clear on any Ballista build, at least Leaguestart I've ever seen. It is even better than Scourge Arrow of Menace with how Fury Valve works and how the splits work. It has been absolutely amazing. And a lot of the downsides of being behind, right, like playing Poison Ballista, playing Explosive Arrow Ballista, there's no dots, it is all immediate, and you can basically jump around, everything gets cleared, good projectile speed, good clear, it is amazing. And as you can see right here, there's obviously way more projectiles going on, and that is just quite important. So other than your single target being worse, your clear is also worse if you go self-cast, especially early on. So the next reason why Ballistas are so broken is because of Hierophant and how the mana regen works. So you will see right here, my Arcane Cloak is going to proc, and then I'm going to go back up with my mana regen, right? Doesn't look very good. That is not impressive at all. And that's because I have no mana regen whatsoever in any gear. I think I have 26 here, but that's about it. Usually if you're an Archmage build, you know what that means. You have to go for this Ami that gives you 100 mana regen. You have to get it as much as you can. However, I'll just trickle it down one more time. I'll show you what happens once I have my Ballistas down. This is what happens, right? It basically triples or even more. And that's because of Ritual of Awakening. Ritual of Awakening gives you a ton of damage. It's 40% more damage with 8 totems, which I currently have. And then it also gives you 1% of regen per totem, so that's 8% life regen, which is decent. I don't have that much life, but it's nice. But 0.5% of mana per second for each summoned totem. And if you're wondering, oh, that doesn't sound like that much, though. That is base mana regen. That gets multiplied by all your increased mana regen. So, for example, Cloak of Defiance, which is often an item used on early Archmage builds, gives you 1% of mana regen per second, and that is a pretty big deal. You are getting 4%, because you get 0.5% per. So you're basically getting mana regen akin to 4 Cloak of Defiances. So yeah, insane mana regen, but also safe playstyle for Leaguestart. If you've ever played a Ballista build, you know what I mean. Very often when you see Leaguestarters and they have 3-4 million DPS, that is not actually all that real, because you probably can't face tank bosses, right? So whenever they do a mechanic, you have to walk out of it. So you can just do that. Now, obviously, you have to look into your Ballistas not dying, which is quite easy early on. You take these res nodes right here, which is what people always don't do. And later on, you can actually go for Purity of Elements. It does count for your totems nearby, and your aura radius is basically screen wide. So yeah, safe playstyle, high damage uptime. You get 8 totems in total. You start at 3 because your Ballistas with the Ballista support. You can see that right here. It has intrinsically +2, so we have 3. Ancestral Bond, I, in this case, get from Wilma's, but before that, you actually path up here through the life, and you get Primal Manifestation, and that's 4. Then you have your Anoint for 5. You get +1 from the Hero Ascendancy for 6, and then we're also using multiple totem support. Now, multiple totem support doesn't sound worth it in theory, but when you realize that these +2 totems also give you more damage, and they give you extra mana regen, and it makes it way comfier to place them, I think it is. Now, the way I tested this is I basically documented everything here in one POB. We just combined it today. It was actually a lot of work, but combined everything into stages. This starts at, obviously, SSF campaign into 20C stage 1, into stage 4, which is what you currently see on this character right here, with a 6-link self-crafted, a Wilma's, a Fury Valve, some rings. Now, I had to use some of these fractures mainly because the gear I wanted wasn't really what was on the market. The market actually had very good gear, obviously because it's very late in the league. I wanted, for example, only 10 spell suppress, not 14. So I had to buy some of these fractures. So if you're wondering why I'm taking 37 dexterity as a fracture or 56 mana, that is why. It was just easier to make. I also made it a point to do 25% movement speed. Obviously, you would want more. Shield is terrible, but I basically just wanted to kind of limit test it. The uniques I used were Piscators, which is a tier 4 unique, Wilma's Requital, which is a tier 3 unique, and Fury Valve, which is a tier 3 unique. These came in at roundabout stage 2, I think. So stage 1, the Piscators, which is basically what you buy at first, and then you completely forget about your wand. At stage 2, you're going to have also Dodra's Tenure, right? Which is, I guess, also, I think, a tier 5 unique. I can't exactly remember. Stage 3 is where you go into Wilma's and Fury Valve. This is, now we're talking around about 4 or 5 divines. And then stage 4 is basically just improving some of the other items. You can look at all of this in PoE. Our defense here comes mostly from our King Cloak and just a big defensive layer. One thing I did want to do though, because it kind of lent itself, was to go for Lucky Spell Suppress In late game, I'm pretty sure I'm going to go Aegis Aurora, actually. Maybe Svalin, I'm not 100% sure. But for now, I tried going Spell Block, but it just wasn't really worth it, especially because I can't fit Tempest Shield in because I'm a mana stacker. So I ended up going for Lucky Spell Suppress. So you will see on my items, I have like crafted Spell Suppress. The reason for that is simply that it is pretty damn hard to get Spell Suppress on top of everything else at the start. So yeah, 10% Spell Suppress here. I only got crafted here. The reason I didn't go for an evasion body armor, by the way, was simply the colors. It would have been annoying to get triple red. Other than that, you get a tiny amount of evasion, which isn't really too much to think about. You get a tiny amount of energy shield, which is nice. We actually do not need stun avoidance on this. I first pathed down to unwavering stance and removed my evasion, and it was worse. Turns out that you don't need stun immunity if your ballistas do all the work. You're not in the midst of things. I literally didn't feel it. Now, Soul of the Brine King was nice for some time, never getting chain stun, but it never happened. It just literally never happened. The only times I noticed anything was against porcupines. But yeah, high likelihood that in endgame, I'm actually going to go for an Aegis setup. So I'll go for like 40, 50k armor. I'll go for Aegis Aurora, probably Glancing Blows, or Svalin, but we'll have to see what happens to that shield. And if I end up going Aegis, I will also go Melding of the Flesh because you already get 5 maximum cold res. Then you go Sapphire Flask with a Mage Blood. You're already at 86%. Then you just need a little bit from Jewels or whatever, and you're going to be at 90 max res. At which point, I'm pretty sure I'm going to phase out of the Lucky Spell Suppress and get into some of the Spell Block. Pantheons are also interesting. You really want to go Soul of Lunaris. So if you don't know about totem builds, one of their bigger downsides that a lot of people don't notice is they get chained on from enemies from the ballistas. If you're a minion player, you kind of know what that is. Soul of Lunaris is actually lovely with the avoid projectiles that have chained. You also get a ton of other stuff, movement speed, fizz damage reduction and whatnot, but it is beautiful. So that's also one of the reasons why going Purity of Elements is very nice, because you don't rely on the avoid being frozen from Soul of the Brine King. But those are all things I will explain in detail if I actually end up league starting this. Now, let's talk about Fury Valve. So Fury Valve is a big clear speed boon right here. So let's see if I actually left some stuff out. So normally, if you go Power Siphon, you fire out 7 projectiles and let's just go for the different one, and you just hit 7 enemies, right? So in this case, I have Pierce, so I'm going to hit a little bit more, boom. But as you can see right here, I'm not hitting that many. So again, ideal no damage because Ancestral Bond, but you can see that right here. I guess I can, yeah. So here you can see it. I'm hitting some enemies, but it is not a lot. So as a self-cast build, it would be like whatever. However, once I equip Fury Valve, what happens is modifiers to number of projectiles instead apply to the number of targets projectiles split towards. What that means in essence is the extra projectiles that you have on your innate skill gem. So for example, here you can see it fires 7 projectiles. That one stays. There's no changing to that. However, everything you add after gets converted into a split instead, which is incredibly strong. It gives you +2 yourself, and then also gives you +1 from once fire an additional projectile. So it's basically like you had plus free chain for your amulet. And the best part about this is split happens before pierce. So for example, if I have a +1 pierce, it will not only split first, but then also pierce and can hit up to 1 target. If you had chain, for example, the pierce would brick the build. So to see what that looks like in comparison here, I still don't have the ballistas on, but just so you know, you have the 7 projectiles, but they're now splitting around, right? So you can see them just going around like crazy, and they're even firing off screen because of that +1 pierce. If I had to guess, I think this will be one of the strongest Legion farmers, and that's definitely what I would do with it if I were to league start it, and if it stays the way it currently is. I'll quickly show you how this build looks like on, like I said, I currently have the gear set on with round about 10 divines invested. It's obviously impossible to say, but I did imagine that Wilma's wouldn't be 5 chaos, it would be like 50, 60 chaos, right? Or maybe even more if the build is actually played, which if I make a video, it probably will be, right? Same with Fury Valve, right? Like, obviously, if you take current prices, all of this together is like maybe 2 divines or something, but that is not relevant. It's only relevant what it is worth on league start. That's also often the problem with these 20 divine challenges at the end of a league, right? Like the prices are completely different, but just so you're aware. I'm going to do a Mino map real quickly. This build is incredibly chill to play. You don't need to aim. You don't need to do anything. You just put down totems. Let me quickly put up this a little bit so we have a little bit of effect. Currently, MTX I have on is the Celestial Power Siphon. other than placing totems while mapping, honestly, I'm not really doing anything. Our Frenzy has cast on crit on it, so it is applying Sniper's Mark. You can also go Mark on hit, but it will not activate on your totems. It will only activate on your Frenzy attack anyways. So Mark on hit gives reduced mark effect, so I might as well put it on cast on crit. You can't really do this early, but now I have like 80 crit on non-totems, so I'm totally fine applying that. But yeah, other than that, there's not much to say. I have a Val Haste here, which I press. Do remember that this doesn't just give you 30% attack speed, it also gives you those 29% cast speed as attack speed. So pressing Val Haste is absolutely huge, even though we cannot use normal haste right now, because we're relying on Purity of Elements. Once again, this is what gives us the resistances to our totems, and it is quite noticeable. Going from 40 to 75% resistances is it's a pretty big deal, as you can imagine. Your totems get like double as tanky. So I'm on the boss. I'll put down the totems. I'll Frenzy. And I also put down the Arcanist brand. This is not really that important. I actually have Frost Bump in here right now. This is against regen, but usually I have just Wave of Conviction here. I do usually have Lightning Golem here, so we're just gonna go Lightning Golem. As you can see, your Arcane Cloak activates automatically. So automation, precision, purity of elements. We shield charge around, right? Like shield charge, Frostblink if you want to, whatever. Let's just really quickly go through. So you have a ton of placement speed, which is very, very important, obviously on heroes. So you place, go, and everything just fires everywhere with the Fury Valve. One thing I will say is that even without Fury Valve, your clear is quite good. I'm going to clear a little bit more with Fury Valve, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like on just one Pierce as well. So don't think that this build doesn't work without. Okay, I'm just going to remove the Speed Shrine real quickly so we can actually see what's going on. So let's remove the Fury Valve real quick, which basically just explodes the whole screen. If we put on our normal Ami, now we only have one Pierce, and this is how it clears. This is basically how the build's gonna look like until you get a Fury Valve. As you can see, in some of these packs, you can kind of feel a difference, but mostly you will feel it in like Breach or Legions or whatever. It's obviously extremely, extremely cozy if you have Fury Valve, but I would just straight up tell you to, I don't know, have like a second Ami lying around, because obviously against bosses it does absolutely nothing. And I can't even see a world where if you're not doing any like clear speed needing content, then you can also just completely forget about Fury Valve. For me personally, it was a huge deal, especially early. Now, let's quickly do the boss here. I'll just show it off to you. So we go in, zoop, let's let him get here. We put down the Ballistas, put down the Penance brand, I Frenzy, and as you can see here, he's just basically dying. And yeah, that's that. It is extremely low management. Like, you put down your Ballistas. I could have literally stand on the edge of the screen. There's no reason to stand next to them. You don't want to have them off screen because of purity, right? Like, then they just get killed really easily. But I mean, it's just, yeah, buttery smooth. Now, one thing you might be wondering is why the hell does he not talk about Indigon? This is the biggest item in terms of payoff. So Indigon obviously gives you up to 2,000% increased spell damage, which on Power Siphon of Archmage results in up to 3,000% increased attack damage. The problem with it is currently it's actually pretty rare. You might not know this because on Leaguestart it isn't usually that expensive, which is because Archmage builds, like most of the spellcasters, just cannot use it. The mana cost gets too ridiculous, but on attack-based builds, it's a lot more manageable because of Leech, Crazy Regen, or for example, on Ballistas, you can actually manage how often you cast. However, and yes, we did drop it from Elder ourselves, which my Leaguestart luck is basically gone at this point. However, it can get quite expensive. So in Frisia League, for example, when mana builds were meta and Whisperer was running rampant, Indigon was actually like 30 divines. So the biggest thing I wanted to do here is actually test it with Wilma's Requital. Wilma's Requital is nowhere near Indigon's power level, don't get me wrong, but it is stronger than, for example, Mind of the Council, and as it gives you another really nice scaling vector. Increases and reductions to cast speed, apply to attack speed. It also gives you Ancestral Bond. It gives you everything you need. It makes your pathing a lot nicer. All this right here can be gone. Now, what gives you cast speed? It's mostly something like Arcane Surge. Your Mana Stacker, you're getting like 20% cast speed. That is now attack speed. Your Frenzy charges that you basically get for free because you can always cast Frenzy whenever you want. That double dips. You get attack speed and the cast speed, both convert. Onslaught works. Stuff like Haste, Val Haste works, Onslaught you get from here from Sleepless Sentries. So overall, you just get a way smoother transition, and I basically wanted to stay away from Indigon and this whole cliche that I believe myself with, where you need Indigon to, like, I don't know, clear any decent content. Everything up to Feared was totally fine with this gear. And just to show you, this is the gear we're currently sitting at in POB. We're sitting at round about 9 million DPS on around about 10 Divines, and this is with Arcane Cloak downtime factored in, just so you're aware. I'm just going to quickly hover over my items. With this amulet, it's actually a little bit better. I actually do amulet swap, but that is completely unnecessary. I only do that at Pinnacle bosses. It gives you another 15% more damage, so we were actually doing it with like 10 million. But yeah, this is my current gear. We're on Lucky Spell Suppress, like I said. I just have a life roll, a mana roll. Overall, your resistances, your suffix pressure is very low because we're not using haste. We're actually using Purity of Elements. The reason for that is Purity of Elements also gives your ballistas resistances. If you don't know, totems start at 40% resistances, so you need to get them to 75, and they will feel a ton tankier. They obviously still die. That's why you have a lot of placement speed, right? You have to manage them. It's part of the deal. But while we have Wilma's, I'm not going to path up to Ancestral Bond, so that also means I cannot take Primal Manifestation and these small nodes. So it is what it is. You have to go Purity. But once you have Indigon, you need to path back up because you need Ancestral Bond, which you won't have from Wilma's anymore. And at that point, you're actually going to grab these life resistance nodes, and then you can also drop Purity of Elements for something like Haste. But let's talk about Indigon on Ballista builds. There is definitely upsides and downsides to it. The upside is you can regulate a lot better how much mana you spend. And that is because if you're a normal build and you have to cast to deal damage, at some point, the increased cost of skills will ramp up so significantly that you literally cannot cast anymore. That has been the biggest downside of these kind of builds in the past. However, with Ballistas is actually the opposite problem, which in my opinion is the better problem to have. It is you have to spend enough, because once your Ballistas are down, they don't cost you any mana, right? They're just gonna fire. So technically, if you can keep up the buff, like, you're never gonna get stuck. It just cannot happen simply because they're already down, they're gonna deal the damage. Another thing though is Arcane Cloak is actually considered mana cost for the Indigon. So whenever your Arcane Cloak goes off, your Ballistas will now also cost more. So if you spam them, you can obviously also increase your mana cost. So you can see right here, boom, and then I put down Ballistas, and now I can basically just keep up the buff over and over and over. Now obviously in endgame, once I have Indigon, I would have a lot more mana regen, right? I'm basically missing like 200% or so. But like I said, the big upside is you will never be in a situation where all of a sudden you're like half or full mana and you cannot cast because your skill costs like, I don't know, 10,000 mana. For leveling, what I did was from level 1 to 36, Rolling Magma, Holy Flame Totem, super chill as always. If something new comes up, then we're gonna play that. We're gonna have to wait for patch notes. After that, at level 36 to level 75, I go for normal Power Siphon. So early on, you get the 4 minimum charges from Hierophant. At level 55, first you take the totem placement speed and the +1, but then at level 55 is your big power spike because you get those power charges for your Power Siphon. At that point, you don't have a lot of mana. Now, what I will say is if you get a lucky Power Siphon of Archmage drop, don't get me wrong, it is going to be way better. You can just pick up all the mana nodes. You get so much flat damage from it so early. It is probably ridiculous. But as it currently stands, farming Transfigured Gems before Merc Lab is just pretty, like, futile. It just takes too long. So yeah, at level 68, you could theoretically swap, but at that point, I already kind of have a tree. And I kind of determined level 76. It's kind of open. You can try around with it. But that is where I'm going to respec into Power Siphon of Archmage Ballista, which is where I have all the important mana clusters. And you can see here on POB, I start with Act 1. So this is basically where it starts out. Then I put, for each act, exact progression. Act 3, I even did before respec. You're going to be Rolling Magma. So all that really changes is you go from Explosive Impact to Ellie Mastery over here to take the 25% chance to treat inverted and get the Lightning and Cold scaling. You're basically just going to focus on Wrath, Herald of Thunder, Flat Lightning, Flat Cold, whatever you want, right? And then it just goes on like that. Act 4, Act 5. Important here as well is you're actually going Elemental Overload before your second lap. First lap, you take Pursuit of Faith, you get the +1 totems. It feels incredible. So I tried this with power charges first on Power Siphon, and believe it or not, it actually felt worse. Simply because you can't put down the totems fast enough. It just feels bad. And at this point, EO gives a ton of bonus, and we're nowhere near all the crit nodes over here, the crit nodes here. So EO is just an easy pick. And then once you're at level 55 in Act 8, you actually respec to crit. So you can see right here, Act 7, I still have Elemental Overload. And then Act 8, you take the crit nodes here, and you're out of LE Overload, and you picked up the power charges. And after level 55, this is completely ridiculous. I'm gonna straight up say it, the damage is just outrageous. From here up to Act 8, I will say it's a little bit fishy. I would say maybe you can go into Caster. I just wanted to go Ballista early, but I can definitely see you going, for example, something like Firestorm plus Armageddon Brand or Armageddon Brand Krima if you really want to, sure. But that is what I chose to do, and that's what I have in this POB. And then, yeah, you can see Act 10 right here. And stage 1 is basically where you respec into Power Siphon of Archmage. So you will notice I haven't really taken high voltage yet, right? I go up to the power charge scaling and whatnot. I have no mana nodes whatsoever. I have no mind over matter. And then boom, stage 1, this is the tree you're gonna be using then. And what happens from there, from stage 1 to stage 4 is, I mean, you can use this on layouts, it basically loads all of them, is basically me just at different stages, having Wilmas, not having Wilmas, because obviously it is still unique, right? You don't want to rely on it too early. So for example, stage 2 doesn't have Wilmas yet. What do? Obviously your tree changes, everything changes. And then from stage 3, where I have Wilmas and Fury Valve, to stage 4, it's basically just improvements of some of the rares. You also notice that obviously my gems change. So for example, on the stage 4, I have like 20 gems here or there. In stage 3, I'm still like level 19 on my gems. I don't have quality on a lot of them. But yeah, POB is linked down below if you want to test out the build, or if you just want to check it out. If I Leaguestart this, which is highly likely if it doesn't get touched, we don't know, right? Wait for patch notes. I will probably Leaguestart this straight up. Ballista builds right now on the right side just have a huge issue. Bow-based builds, having to have a quiver, no shield. It misses a ton of the punch. Endgame just hits a lot harder nowadays, especially in tier 17s. So a mana setup is just incredible. Like, wand ballistas right now are the way to go. It is what I'm going to be exploring. And let's hope it kind of stays this way. With that being said, if you have some feedback, if you are taking this and you, for example, have some ideas, definitely hit me up on Discord. Discord link down below in the description. I will be testing a little bit more. Obviously, next we're going to test the Indigon version of the build. I might even play around with Aegis, with Mage Blood, whatever is necessary. And yeah, I'm super stoked to be back to Pure 1. Definitely expect a lot more content. Also a lot more new player-friendly content for some of the people who come over from Path of Exile 2. But yeah, with that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.